Hello, my name is Adam Hexter, and it's an absolute honour to have been awarded the EORS Orthoregeneration Award. I'm from University College London in the United Kingdom, and today I'll be presenting my research on porcine xenografts in anterior cruciate ligament reconstruction. And the study was a histological study in sheep comparing two femoral fixation devices. So the background to this talk is that there is no perfect ACL graft at present, and the ACL graft choice remains a matter of controversy. And this is because the existing grafts each had their own limitations. For instance, autografts are associated with donor site morbidity, allografts are associated with slower biological incorporation, and synthetic grafts have been associated with synovitis. And it's known that these grafts heal to bone through an indirect insertion, which is characterized by Sharpie-like fibers, and it does not regenerate the fibrocartilage transition zone seen in the native ACL. And on the right-hand side of the screen here, you can see the Sharpie fibers indicated at the tendon-bone interface. So, there is search for new grafts that could address the unmet clinical need in ACL reconstruction and avoid the current limitations associated with existing grafts. And decellularized porcine supraflexor tendon is a promising option. In vitro, it's been shown to have the necessary mechanical strength for use as an ACL graft, and it certainly holds promise as an off-the-shelf graft option. However, before this study, the in vivo graft healing of porcine xenograft in ACL reconstruction had not been reported. So, with this in mind, the aims and hypotheses of the study. So the first aim was to understand the graft healing of implanted porcine xenograft at the 12-week time point. This time point was chosen because this is the point at which tendon-bone interface after ACL reconstruction is at its weakest. Second, we aimed to compare cortical suspensory fixation and cross-pin femoral fixation. And our two hypotheses were, first, porcine xenograft will remodel into a ligament-like tissue with an indirect insertion. And second, femoral fixation method would influence the graft healing observed. So the methodology was to use an ovine sheep model of ACL reconstruction. And 12 sheep were included, and unilateral single bundle ACL reconstruction was performed using porcine xenograft. The sheep were divided into two groups. The first group used endobutton as their femoral fixation, and the second group used crosspin fixation using stratus. Tibial fixation was achieved using a soft screw in all cases. Analysis of graft healing was purely histological, and this was conducted at the 12-week time point after which animals were euthanized. Histological analysis was performed in the bone tunnels, which was via resin-embedded histology, of the intra-articular neoligament, which was via paraffin wax-embedded histology, and assessment of collagen fiber alignment and crimping was achieved using polarized light. So what did we find? Well, all animals were standing within 2 hours of operation, and all animals remained in the study for the duration of its course, and there were no withdrawals due to complications such as infection. At retrieval after 12 weeks, the intra-articular graft resembled a vascularized ligament-like structure, and there was no obvious or overt signs of synovitis. However, in the crosspin stratus group, there was one graft rupture observed. This slide shows the histological appearances. So figure A shows the stratus fixation, figure B shows the endobutton fixation, and figure C shows the tibial bone tunnel. The dashed arrow indicates the fixation system, and the solid arrow indicates the porcine xenograft. When looking in the bone tunnels, Sharpie-like fibres were seen both in the femoral tunnel and vertebral tunnel, thus indicating an indirect insertion had formed. The graft material did not appear to trigger an inflammatory response, and in the femoral tunnel, the endobutton was associated with superior remodeling when compared to the crosspin group. This was best seen under polarized light, where in the tendon group, in the endobutton group, the tendon appeared to have more advanced remodeling because crimp was present, whereas in the crosspin group, the distribution of polarizing regions was far more inconsistent. So one of the main learning points from the study was that the stiffer crosspin femoral device was associated with worse graft healing compared to the endobutton. And one explanation for this could be the more static local environment immediately distal to the stratus block. And without doubt, further research is now needed that looks at the biomechanical properties and histological findings of porcine xenografts at various time points in the post-operative course, because as we know, graft healing is a dynamic process that occurs after many months. So in conclusion, both of our hypotheses were in fact supported by our research. So firstly, porcine xenografts did indeed regenerate an indirect insertion that had Sharpie fibres present. And this is indeed similar to the graft-to-bone healing process seen for tendon autografts and tendon allografts in the literature. And secondly, the femoral fixation device did influence graft healing, with superior outcomes seen in the endobutton cohort when compared to the crosspin fixation device. So thank you once again for the opportunity to make this presentation. It's an absolute privilege to have been awarded the EORS Orthoregeneration Network Award. I would like to acknowledge the co-authors of the paper, so Karen Hing from Queen Mary University of London, Professor Faraz Haddad from University College London and University College London Hospitals, and lastly, Professor Gordon Blunn from the University of Portsmouth. And for those of you who would like to read the whole study, it was published in the open access journal Bone and Joint Research in 2020. Thank you again.